All right, Greg. So I'd like to officially welcome you then to the next video audio stream interview for Dark Bites. And I guess to get right into it, it's probably a question that you've been asked a million times. But I guess the million dollar question though is, what is Dry Bones the movie?
Dry Bones is a horror comedy. It is meant to be in the spirit of 1980s horror comedies like Fright Night and House. And it's essentially about a man who, as a child, was terrorized by an imaginary creature under his bed. At least decades later, his shrinks have convinced him it was imaginary. And he's forced to return home to clean up his late mother's house and put it on the market. And as soon as he starts sleeping in his old bed, strange things start happening. And we find that, of course, the creature was alive and has been waiting for him all these years in the house. And on top of all of that, it's a succubus, which only contributes with his psychological issues with women. But it's going to be a very funny film. And the last act will get fairly disgusting. It'll be in keeping with Slime City and the films I'm known for, and of course Basket Case and some of the trauma films. But it will be a very character-oriented comic piece up until that point.
Okay. And what was your inspiration for coming up with the idea of this in the first place? I mean, was it maybe based on any of your own childhood fears or something you just wanted to do for a long time?
Well, I should say that I'm not the director of this film. I'm the writer and the producer. The director is an actor friend of mine named Michael O'Hear. And I'm trying to do something very crazy with my life, which is to make a living as a novelist and a filmmaker. Which, for the last 6 years I've been managing despite an insane amount of credit card debt. But there comes a time every year, at least once, when I find myself not just strapped for cash, but I feel the walls closing in on me and don't know how I'm going to get out of this vault. And Michael, who appeared in Slime City Massacre, and he's in Snow Shark, which I also produce, which comes out February 19th, was kind enough to give me some freelance writing work so that I could pay my bills and get through Christmas. This was not this past Christmas, but the year before. Mm-hmm. I had previously rewritten a film for him called Dusk. It was a vampire film, and that script turned out well. I wasn't involved as a producer. Michael was going to he was going to direct, star, and produce it himself, and things just didn't come together for him. It's very tough when you do a low-budget film that you have to shoot on weekends because you're at the mercy of everyone's schedule, and you have to keep the enthusiasm up. And if you're telling people that a film is going to take months to shoot, things go downhill from the start.
Right.
So that film just didn't happen. Michael's an actor, he's a director, I don't think he's a producer. So he contacted me and asked me to write an original script for him instead of rewriting it. I had him over, and this is what I do with, I call them clients, people I write scripts for micro-budget films. And he had two ideas. One was the classic thing under the bed story, and the other one was a succubus story. And he wanted to make them fit together. They're really two very different ideas, and it's kind of hard to merge them. But I also had a story about not necessarily a succubus, but a woman who changes shapes and assumes all the identities of the different women in one character's life. So I use my story as a way to bridge his two stories, and that's how we came up with the script. And when I write a script for someone, it usually takes me a month to finish, but that's really only about 4 days of work. So the story, it's really a matter of digesting the characters, having a few scenes in mind, and just letting it percolate let it percolate until it's time to actually do the writing. And then it goes very fast for me.
Okay. Now, speaking of, of course, your past involvement with Michael O'Hare, it looks like you're definitely getting to enjoy, a bit of a reunion of sorts, considering you've worked with, a lot of the cast and crew from other films, such as Michael O'Hare and, John Arena from Slime City Massacre and, Blanca Blackthorne from another movie that shall not be named. Now, do you find that aside from Michael O'Hare, of course, is that purely coincidental, or do you specifically, try to make an effort to work with a lot of the same crew, as much as possible?
Well, it's largely dependent on where I live. When I lived in New York City, I tried to work with a lot of the same actors, and now that I'm in Buffalo, I try to work with a lot of the same people. When I did Slime City Massacre in 2009, I still brought some of the actors that were in New York City back in the 80s to Buffalo to act in that. I like working with the same people. But beyond that, I should say that we have a large horror filmmaking community and genre, science fiction's thrown in there as well, in Buffalo, and it's a small city, so it's kind of hard for us all to avoid each other, even if we wanted to. And some of us are just friends. I mean, Michael is involved with a film festival I run every year, and we all keep up on each other's projects. So, in Michael's case, he brought me onto the film. He knew he wanted to star and direct in this film. I wrote the script for him, and I was so happy with the script that I said, I want to produce this myself. Because his vampire film Dusk isn't the only film I wrote a script for that didn't get finished. I've written 4 or 5 scripts for people who just didn't have what it took to raise the money and make the movies. It's not easy. So I said, I want to produce this one myself just to make sure it gets made and to make sure it gets made in a timely fashion. So that's really why I'm involved to the extent that I am. I wrote a part for John Renna. I wrote a part for some other people. These are friends of mine. A lot of the actors I don't know. They're friends of Michael's. He's casting theater people that he knows because he's a theater actor as well. Melantha, I actually was supposed to work on a film with, and I will mention the film, Prison of the Psychotic Damned. I was supposed to direct way back in 2008, and things just didn't work out between me and the producer on that, so I bailed. But I've stayed in touch with her. She was a guest at my film festival 2 years ago. And I should say, I finally sat down and watched Prison of the Psychotic Damned, despite my misgivings about how that whole thing went down. And even though I watched it with the fast-forward button, because I thought it was incredibly talky, I thought it was a surprisingly well-made film. And I contacted the director, D.W. Conda, to tell him I thought so.
Good. Yeah, I know. I had a chance to interview him in the past as well, and it was a good guy to talk to.
Yeah, well, we've been in touch, periodically. I wouldn't say often, or that we're friends or anything, but sure. I watch it, and I was extremely impressed with his work as a director and with some of the visuals. And that was a movie made in 9 days, 9 insane long days. And I told him I thought it turned out better than if I had done it, because I know he did some rewriting of the script. And my whole thing of doing that project was to work from somebody else's script. I didn't want to be involved with the script writing. But anyway, after all these years, Melantha and I will finally get to work together, and I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Now, of course, there's one actor that you haven't worked with before, at least not professionally. It's your own daughter, Kaylin. How did that decision to cast her and to get her involved in the film come about?
Well, she was an extra in Slime City Massacre, and she ruined several takes with Roy Frumkus. So I have worked with her before, and I would label her a difficult actor. Well, listen, she's been involved on the periphery of the films I've done locally. By that I mean, besides Slime City Massacre, also Snow Shark. In that I would take her to the special effects lab, and she'd see the creatures and props being made. So it's in her blood. She's exposed to that. She's a performer. Many children are, but some really stand out. She's one of those kids who really stands out. And she mentioned to me that she would like to be in one of my movies. And I was writing the script at the time, and so I did write a scene that involves her. And that scene will also involve Kevin Van Hentenryck from the Basket Case movies. Yeah. So we're looking forward to it, and hopefully she'll be better behaved this time around. We'll find out this Sunday when we do our first cast reading.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to checking that out. And actually, you kind of beat me to the punch as far as the next question goes. Speaking of Kevin, of course, it was the star of Basket Case franchise, which I think you've only got maybe a couple of degrees of separation from that film. How did Kevin get on board?
Kevin and I actually worked together for one day on the set of Frank Henenlotter's Brain Damage. There's a scene in which his basket case character, Dwayne Bradley, gets onto a subway car carrying the wicker basket and has a stare down with Rick Herbst, who plays Brian, the man transporting Elmer the parasite around. And it was a funny scene. Took us 3 hours to shoot because there's a train that New York City designates for film shooting, and it takes 3 hours for it to go to one end of its isolated tunnel and come back. So other than the day that he came to town and had to be fitted for a wig because he'd gotten a haircut, it was a very short collaboration. I don't even think I got to speak to him, to be honest with you. I was the first assistant director on that. But we saw each other at a convention in Pittsburgh 2 or 3 years ago. I was there with Debbie Rochon promoting Slime City Massacre, and he was there with his Basket Case co-star Beverly Bonner and Frank Henenlotter promoting Frank's film. So we got to, it's a slow convention. We got to talk quite a bit, and we got in touch with each other about this film, and he's going to come out for a weekend. And we're going to juice up his part as much as we can. He plays Michael O'Here's father in a series of flashbacks, which establish the succubus.
Okay. Now, speaking of Slime City Massacre as well, I mean, if you're, slithering brains from, both the original Slime City and then the next one, Slime City Massacre, if they're an indication that, you'd obviously rather grow, prosthetic over CGI and computerized digital effects, what can we expect from your featured creature here from Dry Bones?
Well, Slime City Massacre was a combination of those things because it was also a combination horror film and science fiction film, and a lot of the science fiction elements kind of needed to be CGI. And I actually thought that RJ7, who, as you know, is a publisher and writer, did a fairly amazing job with those brains. So even though I'm one of the people who often laments CGI, it's bad CGI that I'm lamenting. Giant monsters who defy gravity, and there's just overkill for me. But there is an artful way to do that stuff, so I am not opposed to using it. However, in this film, I think there's one visual effect in the whole film. The rest of it's all prosthetics, involving the creature and involving, I don't want to give it away, what she does to her victims.
Okay. We'll have to watch the film to find out.
The effects artists are Rod Durick and Eric Zemecki, who work on everything I do now. Rod was the supervisor on Slime City Massacre. Eric did a lot on that. Eric helped create the Snow Shark for Snow Shark, and they're both good friends, and I'm kind of looking at this as really just a way to do a fun shoot with a lot of people that I like. We're shooting most of it in my house, so I have to like them.
Now, I understand that, unlike any of your, the previous films that you've worked on, you've decided to take an unconventional route as far as the funding go. I know we've talked about this before, but for those that maybe don't know about that, can you maybe tell us a little bit more about your Indiegogo campaign?
Well, I think these days Indiegogo has become all too common. Indiegogo and Kickstarter are two crowdsourcing platforms, which means you sign up on a website and basically ask people to donate money, rather than, say, get an investor to put in $1,000. Try and get your friends to kick in 25 or 50, and just out of the goodness of their hearts, and then hopefully go beyond your friends. I prefer to work with investors. I have investors for this film. I just don't have investors to do the film the way I think it needs to be done. Therefore, we're doing the Indiegogo campaign for additional funding. If you go to Indiegogo.com, do a search on Dry Bones, it will take you to our page. All the information is right there. We're looking to raise a total of $3,000, which will supplement our investor capital. That money will be used to feed our actors, to pay gas for our crew who are volunteers, things of that nature. It's an 18-day shoot. We're going to spend at least $2,000 on food, feeding people. So that's the way it goes.
Okay. And so basically, I mean, how does, regular maybe Joe or Jill, who's never been a part of, movie-making history that wants to be a part and help Dry Bones, get up and running, that might be concerned about where their money is going exactly as far as getting returns on them, what would you say to them?
Well, first of all, on Indiegogo, you're not investing, you're donating. So getting a return is not a concern. It's not an element. It's not a possibility. Basically, anybody can make a donation with a credit card or pledging a check. You do it right through the website. It doesn't come to us. You don't have to worry about anything with taxes. Indiegogo handles that whole thing. What I try and make as an argument is that there are many projects out there seeking your hard-earned dollars. I've seen personally, just in my own area, several projects where they had a goal that was unrealistic, they failed to raise their money, and the projects either were partially filmed, not filmed at all. In that instance, a donor has to say, what did I donate my money to? Yes, I got this swell T-shirt, or yes, I got an invitation to a premiere that'll never happen, but what did I get out of this? And the answer is nothing. I have enough of a track record that people know I'm going to finish what I start. I'm going to reach for a certain bar. I'm going to involve a certain amount of talent, and I'm going to promote the hell out of the project when it's done. I'm not just going to put it on the shelf and move on to the next project because that's what my ego craves. I'm going to nurture the film along as I have Snow Shark for the last year, leading up to its DVD release, and I'll do everything in my power to get the film distributed. Every film I've worked on, whether I was writer, director, producer, assistant director, has been distributed. That's not something a lot of people can say.
No, that's a big guarantee.
So, your name will appear in the credits. If you donate a lot, it will be listed as some sort of producer, and you will be associated with an actual film that will be seen by people. It will definitely screen. It will definitely do film festivals. I can't promise it will be distributed, but I'm sure it will be.
Okay. And what can you tell us about your plans for your schedule for shooting it this spring?
Well, it is right around the corner. As I mentioned, this Sunday is our first cast reading. Melantra is coming to town from Montreal. We're going to do the face casting and hands casting so the guys can design the creature. She plays 3 roles: the real love interest, the fake love interest, and the succubus who manipulates herself to be the fake character. So she's going to get to show a lot of talent in this one. And the guys from that point will begin extensively working on the special makeup effects. Our first weekend of shooting will be at the end of March, and we will be shooting primarily weekends until the end of May. Although one of my conditions to Michael of me producing this was that we couldn't just do weekends. I wanted to do one 6-day week where we could knock off a big chunk of the film. So it'll be a 6-day week, and I think 6 weekends beyond that. But it will be done before summer, done shooting. We'll edit it over the summer, and sometime in September we'll have a finished film.
Okay. And now, if it's not too early to ask, then do you have any, post-production or distribution plans as far as promoting it, where we might see it, things such as that?
Well, I'll definitely do a premiere here in Buffalo. I'm thinking I may do a 1-week theatrical run as well, but we will be playing it on the film festival circuit for several months, and I hope that we'll get a distribution deal fairly quickly. I mean, when we premiered Snow Shark, I announced our DVD deal with Pop Cinema at the premiere. The film was only done for a month, and we already had a deal lined up. So I'm hoping the same thing will happen with this. I think it's a really funny script. I think it's a really good script. I'm looking at it from the producer's point of view, not as the writer who wrote it, but I'm looking at what the elements are, what the structure is, what the roles are for the actors. There's a lot for them to do with the comic elements. So I'm very excited about it.
Very cool. Now, the next question, Greg, it kind of speaks to your undying energy for producing as much as you do produce. I know you've often stated that, first and foremost, you're a movie guy. Despite your high-paced output of, really successful books that you've done as late, such as, Carnage Road, Jake Hellman series, Frenzy Way series, and a lot more through a Medallion. It's a lot of books for a movie guy. Besides Never Sleep, and how do you balance such a frenzied workload between book world and movie world and still manage to earn a lot of high praise for each of your finished products?
Well, it's been a very busy couple of years, I'll say that. I had 3 books published last year. Tortured Spirits from the Jake Hellman Files, The Frenzy War, which was the second werewolf book, and my zombie novella, Carnage Road. I think all 3 of them were like my best 3 books, and they all came out in 1 year. In addition, we finished making Snow Shark. I worked on a big werewolf film called Ward's Island, and I was the associate producer, line producer, and assistant director on a movie called Model Hunger, which Debbie Rochon directed, starring Tiffany Shepis and Lynn Lowry. So it was a very busy year. It's tough. Like anything else, you juggle a lot of balls in the air. I will say, though, that I would have to revise your description. I don't know how long ago it was we had that conversation. I usually tell people that I love both mediums equally, not so much so anymore. I definitely consider myself a professional novelist. I do 2 books a year, and the filmmaking is more of a labor of love. I don't make a lot of money, if any, on the ones that I make. I make sure that my investors get first money back. I make sure that any actors that we bring to town get paid. But I am primarily making my living writing novels and working on other professional films. I'm not making my living from these labors of love that I do, which they're more for I don't want to say fun, but more for love than anything else.
Okay. With that in mind, actually, Greg, what are the chances, do you think, of you maybe trying to tie in some sort of, a book project to any of your recent films, rather, such as Dry Bones? I think there'd be a market for it, though, don't you think?
I would say it's not very likely. One thing that I found is that, my novels, Johnny Gruesome, Personal Demons, and The Frenzy Way, were all based on screenplays. I didn't just novelize those screenplays, add a few words. I really developed them into novels. It took me deeper into the character's psyche. And once I did them as novels, I lost any desire to do them as movies myself. I would happily sell them to Hollywood to let somebody else make them. And I think the same would be true of films to book, especially because the films that I do tend to be kind of goofy. There's only so much you can do on a micro budget, so it's good to have a specific personality and attitude. Whereas the books are a lot more serious, they're a lot more ambitious, they have much bigger scope, especially the Jake Hellman files, which is going to be 9 or 10 books long. So I think the personality of the movies I make is very different from the novels that I write, and I don't really see the films that I make translating into novel form.
Okay. Now, is there anything else about Dry Bones that you like to share that I might have missed asking about? Anything else you want to throw out there?
Well, at this stage, when we're just going into pre-production, there isn't really too much that I can say. We're shooting it here in Cheektowaga, which is a suburb of Buffalo, shooting most of it in my house. We do have a great cast. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the script. I'm very interested in seeing what the effects guys come up with for the creature. We've tossed around a lot of stuff, and the first sculptures, I imagine, will be coming in a few weeks. And I'm basically just talking to people about money right now. Money is the least interesting aspect about filmmaking, but unfortunately, it's what has to be done. That's a producer's primary responsibility. Yeah. Raise the money and put together the right crew, and I'm on that right now.
Excellent.
But it's happening, and we're going forward. So.
Good. Based on your past history of completing the films you've worked on and how they've turned out, I think we're all pretty excited to see how this one pans out as well.
Yeah, me as well. I'm the writer, I'm the producer, I'm also the assistant director. Michael will deal with the actors. I'm just going to make sure we have the coverage we're supposed to have. I think the film has my voice, and then it's his job as the director to give it his voice. So we'll see how that collaboration pans out, on the screen, but I'm incredibly optimistic. I think it's going to be a really good project.
Good. Well, we're all looking forward to that, and hopefully I'll get a chance to jump on set and do some coverage from that perspective as well down the road. Yeah,
you should definitely come out during the 6 days that Melantha's here.
Perfect.
Yeah, I should say, this is a U.S.-Canadian production. We have, I think, 4 actors from Canada coming in.
That's pretty exciting. I'm telling you, Canada's getting up there in the ranks too.
Well, it's nice to see some work coming from Canada to the U.S. instead of going from the U.S. to Canada.
Exactly.
It all goes to Vancouver anyway, right?
That's true.
It's not as much in Toronto as there is over there. Well, the TV goes to Vancouver because it's close to California.
Yeah. It's building up though. I think it's slowly building up. So Toronto's becoming more and more popular.
Well, it's a great substitute for New York City. It always has
Yeah.
been for like 2 blocks there. The film I did this summer, Ward's Island, ironically enough, it was shot here because this was the only place where they could get an airport. Not Buffalo Airport, but Niagara Falls Airport, is that little tiny airport. So they spent weeks scouring the city of Buffalo for every nook and cranny and alley that could substitute for New York City. We shot on a bridge, we shot in the water, and so it's interesting to see Buffalo subbing for New York City for a change instead of Toronto.
It's a little closer to the heart, I think, anyways.
They could have brought Cher here from Moonstruck instead of going over there.
Yeah, no doubt.
Snap out of it.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very, very much, Greg. I really appreciate that. It's always a good time talking to you.
Thank you, Rick.
And a special thank you to all our listeners for tuning in to another exclusive Dark Bites live audio interview where anything can happen. Hope you enjoyed listening. For more info on Dry Bones and how you can help make indie movie history, tune into the fan page on Facebook, and if you have a buck to spare, look for Dry Bones on indiegogo.com. Since your chance to help out ends at the end of this month. Until then, stay hungry and stay dark.